Hi everyone, this is Cam. I will be doing my presentation on Russian disinformation and media cybersecurity because I'm also a journalism major and thought it might be interesting to look at how those two align. Let's get started. Disinformation. What is it? It is false information purposely spread to deceive. It can be channeled through false context, imposter content, fabricated content, and manipulated content. So there are just minor differences between all of these, but you can see them kind of on different channels. Like, for example, imposter content is many times done like either on social media or the web. So Sean Spicier on Twitter, if you know him, I know and love him, or whoever's actually running that account. But there's a Twitter account that is named Sean Spicier. And he is already, or the account has already specified that it is not Sean Spicer, but it looks so realistic that full-blown, reliable news sources have accidentally quoted his Twitter handle than the actual Sean Spicer's Twitter handle. And then an example of fabricated content would be like photoshopping someone into a picture to make it look like a totally different scene. So I've seen pictures of ICE officers photoshopped into like a line at Central Park, which I know they were not there, but it makes it look like it was an ICE scene. So the history. There's actually a bit of history behind disinformation. So before fake news was coined, it was called disinformation. Still is, but it's more well known as fake news today. So it started in the 1960s, right after during World War II. He used it to gain some leverage during World War II, and then after into the Cold War. In the 1980s, there was a drastic disinformation increase. For example, you may have heard the conspiracy that AIDS was man-made. I don't, like, thinking about it, it sounds absolutely crazy, but Russia has been on the uphill with creating incredibly foolproof conspiracies. So they started with one article, and it eventually made its way to 50 different countries' main news sources, which is kind of terrifying that 50 different main countries, or countries' main news sources, actually thought that it could be real. In 2016, Trump started using the term fake news to claim for disinformation. However, that led into what we kind of feel today, which is a kind of general distrust about information because we're not really sure what's real and what's fake, as the Trump presidency has started a wave of people just calling out news they don't like, or that could possibly be just not to their liking, not aligned with their ideals, as fake news, which has become synonymous with disinformation. So it makes it really, really difficult to create a specific divide between just things you don't like and disinformation. Here's some examples. We got South Lone Star on the left. He took a picture of a Muslim woman looking obviously very distraught near one of the bridge attacks in London, and claimed that she just paid no attention to the terror attack, casually walking by a dying man while on his phone. We know this isn't true. It was verified that that woman, there was a completely different story behind it, but he used this picture of this random woman, just in a headscarf, to promote a Islam ban. And it actually has worked to a degree, especially regarding Brexit. As you can see on the top right corner, that, and then the middle on the right, that account has actually been temporarily blocked, just because that account alone actually sent out something like, or it got like 400,000 retweets, just for promoting pro-Brexit ideals. And so what happens is when you can create and craft a fake public opinion majority, more people will hop on that bandwagon. Also, it says in the bottom, an original bot got 5 retweets from humans, even if they don't know that. So it makes this false sense of community where, it makes people think, do you want to be part of the community? Do you want to be part of the movement? Do you want to be part of the majority? Or do you want to sit home and be sad and curl up into your minority opinions? So that's kind of how Russia has really taken this to the next level, at least in today. Russian disinformation vehicles. Shaping pro-Russia public opinions through disinformation in the digital age is done through a few different vehicles. One being social media, like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Another being chat rooms like 4chan, 8chan, where free speech is the freest speech probably in the world. News media, where news anchors will still talk about Russian ideals because, one, either they don't know and they can't even verify it, or two, because they're calling it out. However, when you have a very substantive conspiracy theory, it actually makes some people want to cling on to it more. Advocacy and activism with, for example, anti-vaxxers, that has been a proven falsehood over and over. The doctor that claimed that got his medical license redacted, but people caught onto it because Russia promoted it so much. So there's tons of advocacy. When I was interning on the Hill, there was an entire day for anti-vaxxers to come protest. The information is completely false. And then, of course, election tampering, which I'm not even going to get into because that's a different story. Motives. It's controlling the public narrative. So that's been their main motive since World War II. They want to disrupt the flow of authoritative information, disrupt the trust that we have in government and actual sources that we should be able to trust. They want to radicalize people and move them generally to the right, so kind of recenter ideologies in different countries so the right is more moderate. And then recruit for their own hacking expeditions. They want to just through doing this, it promotes violence against minorities. They also do promote violence, hate crimes, shootings, all that stuff. And then they also are looking to overall identify patterns of security, intelligence, governance, because that's what helps them jeopardize our cybersecurity. As we saw a few weeks ago on our module, they are using our vulnerabilities and our teeny tiny cracks and building their own little mainframe of what they think our infrastructure emotionally, psychologically, physically, digitally looks like. So the national security and cyber threat component, it's a pretty big deal. There are significant threats to democracy, obviously, when you can't trust your own government and its information coming out, when you can't trust your neighbors, when there is increase in hate and increase in a normalization of crime and hate crime and violence. It really does threaten a beautiful democracy where we can live and vote for people to represent us. Undermining government information authority, as I mentioned, it makes people not trust what we already have, what we should be able to trust. If anything, when in doubt, you go to a .gov website. And that's what they teach us in middle school and elementary school and high school when we're doing research projects. But that is decreasing currently in trust, public trust. Cybersecurity. No country is immune from this disinformation. No one's figured out how to completely eradicate it. Especially because there is a strong disconnect between corporate America and the government. And social media is still very, very new. So because a lot of it is just numbers now, like how many retweets, people base their decisions off how many retweets or, what following does this person have? They fall in line with elite opinions a lot of the time. So when Kanye tweets to support President Trump, who's supporting Russia, that radicalizes the right, for example. And there's just such a large disconnect that government and business can't really work together in any level. I mean, we've talked about cybersecurity. We've talked about the actual infrastructure security between corporate and government. And now social media comes into play, news media comes into play, elections come into play, and they just can't stop it. So it also increases Russia's ability to find and manipulate patterns in countries, as I mentioned before. It makes them a lot stronger when they are wanting to go in and kind of create some serious damage, similar to what they did in Estonia. So our digital world and modern cybersecurity land is just, our knowledge is lacking so severely behind our adversaries. We are frantically and retroactively putting out the fires caused by Russian disinformation. And that gives them that key to understanding our own mainframe of security. So what next? I think if I can give my own recommendations, I did not compile this from someone else's research. This is just based upon my own. So from government regulators, authority figures that we know are going to be, or hopefully providing the truth, we're going to trickle it down into two main sectors. There's corporate America / digital innovators and democratic institutions. Democratic institutions like the DCCC, giant think tanks, like institutions that we can probably trust, universities. We need to help them help themselves meet their audience's needs. The reasons why people are going to social media and Twitter is because they don't really feel like any news sources is catching them and their attention perfectly. And that's a lot of the reason why these disinformation news sources are perfect, because they specifically target very, very small pockets of people, and that gets them interested. And then we also need to just generally revise how political communication is theorized and objectively looked at, because obviously it's not working right now. Then on the other side, corporate America and digital innovators, we need to have better social media regulation. That does not mean restrictions, but it does mean we need to be working with, the public and corporate America to give a better education both to corporate America and the public, to be able to label, assess, and either accept or decline disinformation getting on social media. Just because Mark Zuckerberg says he's a facilitator, he does hold some sort of fiscal and social responsibility to democracy to make sure that lies are not being spread, which is then helping democracy crumble. So overall, there's my references. Overall, that's kind of where I'm at. That is my take on cybersecurity and Russian disinformation, and I look forward to continuing to present and hear your guys' critique and feedback. Thanks so much.